All right, Quentin, you are first up.
All right. So it's been all e-filing all the time this week. And got him some good commits this morning. I'm going to keep just chugging along. I think we have a couple of things where we might need some more information from Tyler to go forward on them. So getting some issues with some of the filing codes not working that I think should work from what we can tell. So I'm not sure if that's on our side or if it's on their side. We have to be able to handle some cases that aren't indexed. So, I mean, obviously, when Tyler comes into jurisdiction, they have some number of cases that were never filed with Tyler to start with, right? So those are non-indexed cases. Anything from, maybe a 5-year-old case if Tyler came in 5 years ago that's not in their system. So we have to let people file things into those cases, even if they were never known about by Tyler. So that's like a new feature we have to add in. Feeling like we have a little bit more progress than I did earlier this week in terms of deadlines, but I still think we're like probably a realistic couple of weeks out, but being totally done and being able to like go through everything manually a couple of more times and make sure that everything's working.
Cool.
Pretty much it.
Bryce.
Yeah, Quinn summarized most of it. That we still probably need a couple weeks. I'm trying to wrap up being able to select who is responsible for payment, which Tyler is weird about. Not like weird about, but there's just a ton of different options as once you start adding in, it could be a subsequent case, or you could be filing into an existing case, or it could be brand new, and all these other things. And so I did a relatively big refactor on the proxy server side yesterday, and I'm trying to add that into the DocAssemble interview, and I might just stop at some point because it's still taking a while. And like Quinn said, there's some other stuff we need to look into and ask Tyler about before. Yeah. That's it.
Cool. Jamie.
Not much to update. I've been just changing the code in response to the previous discussion and removing a lot of messy code that I had previously written to deal with variations. So since I won't be here, well, since I only have like about a week left.
You're just about to start, huh?
So the code is now completely simplified to deal with only standardized formats. So I because the way I was dealing with the variations was really rough. So I feel like if someone came and saw that,
they want to know.
It would just be bad. Yeah.
Well, that's great. We're very happy that you were able to come in and, because this is probably Friday is October. So I imagine, is that your start date next Friday?
October 4th. So
October 4th.
I have a little bit more than a week.
Well, I was going to say, is this the last time we're going to see you then, or are we going to see you one more time?
I think one more time.
Okay, great. Then I'll hold off on being a big goodbyes and everything. But I'm very excited about the fact you've been able to pick up this. I like to think of it like a relay race. You've picked it up and run your little sprint, and it sounds like you're getting it all nice and ready to hand off to someone, which is exactly what we'd want to do. So very cool. And I remember looking at what code was there before, that it was looking very nice. So good work. Michelle has something to add.
So this was actually my main thing I want to talk about today. Maybe for our next step, we can get this into, my suggestion is AL Massachusetts, so that Jamie can actually have the commits on there instead of like us taking his code and putting it on there with a different name, just to have your contribution like clearly in our repositories. So I can talk you through.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Creating a file.
For practical reasons, if we can't always like Git has a thing called code checking, which I don't remember. I don't remember the exact thing, but essentially you can say like this email is the author, and we have Jamie's email from the other Git commits he's done, and so we can always like say Jamie's the author, and we're just moving this over.
So if we don't get to it, that's fine. But I think
Yeah.
it would be nice to just have you.
It would just be nice to not have us have to like try and do some stuff over.
Yes.
But yeah.
And I appreciate the notion of making the authorship clear and making sure Jamie gets credit for the work they've done. So you'll always have a place on the internet you can point and say, there, look, there's the stuff I added. All right, cool. Lily.
Right. Today I'm going to do a little demo for an experiment that I have been trying. Basically, I want to add some colors to our interviews out of box. But just want to see how you guys feel about it. I'm going to share my screen. All right, so
I see little emoji icon type thingies.
Yeah, I added color to the header, navigation bar, and here the title is colored, and then we have a little colored panel. I'm like a very, very simple interview, so don't pay attention to the content, just look at the colors. And this is the last screen, the last screen. And then also we have an about screen that has some colors too. Okay.
So is this just a alternative CSS that you point to, or what's the?
Yes, basically CSS, but also with some div tags so that it can reference to the CSS rules class names. So now if I don't, this is basically using the MassAccess brand repo. If I don't use it, and I don't get it. If I don't use the brand repo, I give it the original black and white thing. Not purely black and white, but
yeah, it's like a polar bear in a snowstorm. There you go.
All right, so this is the original what do I have currently. Let's just see the difference. That's the one with it, and that's the one without it.
So the thing this makes me think is that it might be interesting if we the fact that you mentioned sort of adding in maybe IDs or names for certain elements so that they could, I assume, gain classes from the CSS. Makes me think that might be an interesting thing to, where there's not a pre-existing hook to basically hang style on, that we might want to think about adding that in as something so that we would be flexible in the future to be able to change the styles of things. Although I suspect a lot of them already have things one could use to fill them.
Yes, good.
And then it also makes me think that, maybe it might be nice somewhere to document what elements have what attributes to make it easier for people to customize their color palettes, just as something to sort of think about for other people who might want to take this and run with it on their own. That might already be part of. I'm not sure. Is that already? I don't remember there being any sort of documentation of that. Does DocuSymbol have something along that for styles, or
It's
just using Bootstrap? It's just using Bootstrap, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It does have some guidance on changing either your Bootstrap theme or CSS. Is this a proposed change for mass access, or is this a proposed change, proposed like demo file for? But like I continue to sometimes be confused by the differentiation.
Well, first of all, I want to thank David for the comments. I think that's exactly where I was going. So the hooks right now, my plan is to add it to the assembly line repo. So the div tags are there. If you don't know style, if you don't have a style that matches it, it doesn't have any effect. Like right here, those tags are there, but because we don't have the CSS, so you don't see any effect. So that's one thing. The other thing is like I did put the color panels into the assembly line repo so that on the about screen, you don't see the color for the headers, but you still get some colored panels. This would give a kind of, I mean, we will have documentation. That's definitely a good idea. But also if you,
well, I'm always for the idea of things that sort of make things more extensible. As far as particular directions of color palette, I worry about making things blue just because blue is the default sort of link color for a lot of people as far as visual language goes. So I worry about making things that aren't links blue. And that's the first thing sort of jumps out. And then I also worry about contrast from an accessibility standpoint, which we actually probably did some looking at some of the light gray on dark gray. We could do better on ourselves and in the existing setup, but and some of the other ones, that's the thing that sort of pops out. But as sort of a proof of concept of an idea of maybe opening things up so that people could have more color palettes, I think that's interesting. I think the real space for that would be in other people who wanted to adopt assembly line stuff, who wanted to change things to their color palettes to match their own internal branding. And so maybe providing some documentation on how and where appropriate, providing some type of little hooks or something that would make it easier for people to customize the out of the box version to their own branding. So that might be interesting. But yeah.
okay.
So yeah, thank you. And then I guess if you have insights about where those, what was difficult, and so you're sort of like the user tester there, for like the notion of like you were someone who wanted to customize the way it looked now, and if you could think about what it was that was difficult for you to do, or to do that customization, then that might surface very well the things that we could think about telling individual and new users about when they're going on their sort of customization journey. So that's something to think about. Oh, hey.
Yeah, great.
Oh, I have someone who you can't go on and see YouTube now. I was a little off of my timing. Maybe it was 8 minutes or something. I don't know. I had to. Okay, Michelle or Lily, anything else as far as like a stand-up sharing?
No, this is it. I mean, we do plan to add some instructions on the documentation website. And as you said, it would be very helpful to do something on the training or whatever teaching tools.
All right, yeah. I think that's, as we, next year, we'll probably spend more time as our sort of new grant comes in, thinking about how people might customize things. And that might come up as a good conversation there. All right, Michelle.
Oh, that reminds me. I was gonna, okay. DocAssemble, Jonathan has been working on like an overhaul of the HTML. So we might want to, I don't know what styles it will or won't affect, but I imagine he's going to try and keep things backwards compatible, but just to be aware of that might be different someday near future. I don't know when it's planned for. Other than that, I don't think I have much, just Jamie's stuff and that. All right. Well, in that case, I always trying to think about assembly line versus non-assembly line. I just helped out with a couple of, looking for some bugs and some of the assembly line stuff. There's other stuff down the road that I've been working on. Been doing stuff to finish up a lot of the Pew Grant on the Spot side. And we have this other new funder, which there's a lot of potential new funder, where there's a lot of back and forth on figuring that out and fun things like getting tax forms and stuff to them. And then I've also been having a lot of communications with the General Counsel's office about various things. So yeah, paperwork fun, coding in words, not in other senses. All right, well, I'll go ahead then. And if there's nothing else, we'll stop the recording and